Your child looks you in the eye. They nod. They repeat the rule back to you, word for word. And then, 20 minutes later, they break it anyway. Not because they forgot. Not because they misunderstood. They knew exactly what the rule was. And they did it anyway. This is one of the most frustrating things about parenting. And most adults assume the answer is simple. Defiance. Stubbornness. A bad attitude. But the real answer is far stranger than that. Because what looks like a child choosing to break rules is actually a child whose brain is physically incapable of not breaking them. And understanding that changes everything. Start with the part of your brain that controls impulse. It sits behind your forehead, in a region called the prefrontal cortex. This is the area responsible for what neuroscientists call executive function. That means the ability to pause before acting. To weigh consequences. To override a strong urge in favor of a rule you already know. It is the brake pedal of your behavior. Here's the thing about that brake pedal in a child. It does not fully exist yet. Developmental researcher Megan Gunnar at the University of Minnesota found that children have a much more reactive cortisol response than adults. Their stress systems are hair trigger sensitive, and it takes far less provocation to trigger a cortisol spike in a child than in a grown adult. A toy someone takes. A rule they do not like. The wrong direction on a drawing. These can trigger a stress response that chemically overrides the rule-following brain, even in a child who knows the rule perfectly. This is not an excuse. It is a biological reality. And the difference matters, because how you respond to your child in those moments depends entirely on how you understand what is happening. When you tell a child who has just broken a rule, in a moment of high emotion, to think about what they just did, you are asking a cortisol-flooded brain to activate a cortisol-suppressed region. It is like asking someone to read a sign in a room that has no lights. The information might be there. But right now, it cannot be accessed. This is why the classic punish and repeat approach produces such inconsistent results. The child is remorseful in the calm aftermath. They really mean it when they say they will not do it again. And then the same situation arises, the same cortisol spike hits, and the brake fails again. Not because they lied about changing. But because the remorseful, regulated child who made the promise is neurologically different from the aroused, overwhelmed child who broke the rule. You are, in a very real sense, watching two different versions of your child. One who knows the rule. And one who cannot yet reliably apply it. Researcher Ross Green, a clinical psychologist who developed the collaborative problem-solving model, reframed this in a way that shifted how many schools and parents approach children's behavior. His central idea is this: children do well when they can. Not when they want to. When they can. A child who repeatedly breaks a rule despite knowing it is not a child who needs harsher consequences. They are a child who is missing a skill. Specifically, the skill of applying what they know under pressure. That reframe is not just compassionate. It is accurate. And it points toward a completely different kind of intervention. Because the brain science is clear on one thing. The prefrontal cortex does not develop faster through punishment. It develops through consistent, low-stress practice. Every time a child successfully applies a rule in a manageable situation, the neural pathway connecting knowledge to action gets slightly stronger. Every time they are given a calm moment to talk through what happened, and what they could do differently, those pathways strengthen further. Over time, across years, those pathways become reliable enough to hold under pressure. But that takes time. More time than most parents expect. More time than one conversation, one consequence, or one very serious talk about why the rule exists. There is one more piece of this that cuts closer to home. The environment inside the family is itself a variable in your child's brain development. Research from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child shows that chronic stress in a child's environment, including harsh or unpredictable parenting, raises baseline cortisol levels over time. And elevated baseline cortisol makes executive function worse. Not better. It makes the brake even less reliable. What this means in practice is that the more regulated you remain when your child breaks a rule, the more you help preserve the neurological conditions under which your child can actually learn. A calm parent response does not reward bad behavior. It creates the neurological window in which learning is even possible. This is not easy. Your frustration is real. Your exhaustion is real. And the gap between what you know intellectually and what you can do in a moment of stress is real for you too. Because you also have a prefrontal cortex. And yours, too, goes offline when you are overwhelmed. That is the mirror this science holds up. The same brain system that causes your child to break rules they already know is the same system that causes you to raise your voice in ways you promised yourself you would not. You know the rule. You just could not apply it in that moment. Your child looks you in the eye. They nod. They repeat the rule back to you, word for word. And what you are really looking at is not defiance. You are looking at a brain in the middle of one of the longest construction projects in nature. One that will take 2 more decades to finish. And in the meantime, what that brain needs most is not a stricter set of rules. It is a safer place to keep practicing the skill of following them.